David Toulis, I argue for loving your neighbor and buying local. Local economy and the free market is our theme and theory here on the David Toulis Show at Nougat Radio, 92.7 FM and 95.3 FM HD4 high definition channel for reaching out 65 miles and providing a tremendous, wonderful public service with many shows, a 3-hour live twaddle-free Russ and Val news show in the morning starting at 6 and Sean Hannity at 3. And we have Laura Ingram and other shows, Coast to Coast AM over the night watches with George Noory. Now we want to find out more about government and what many hope is good government. Can government do better? Can government make reforms, especially in one of its biggest services? And that would be a service to families, as we're to understand, through public education. And there's a story on the front page of the paper today, and a letter being issued by 130 grandees of Chattanooga, the best people in Chattanooga, insisting on equity, that the schools have to be equitable. And to find out what equity really is, we're going to ask Warren Mackey, who's finishing his 12th year on the county commission. He is a businessman. He taught history as a professor for 38 years at Chattanooga State. And he has two lines in which he serves the public now, and that's through Mackey Monuments, his business, and he's also a steward of lands and a landlord for many different renters in the Chattanooga area as well. Warren Mackey, you're running for re-election. What do you make of the Unify Ed Apex report and some of the uproar that has followed it?
Unified Ed, they have taken a really good approach to addressing issues related to public education. One of the biggest needs right now in Hamilton County is to improve the workforce. Not all of the schools are performing at the same level, yet we need all hands on deck. There were a group of businessmen that the mayor brought in. They did a study. And one of the biggest findings of that study is that the schools needed to be improved, and they recommended ways to improve those schools. For example, ideally, as the American economy, the world economy become more technological, that task force consisting of business leaders, people who are running these major companies in Chattanooga, one of the things they said is there should be one device per student, one computer per student. In many of these schools, they do have one computer per student plus the lab. At many of the other schools, especially in my district, you might have one laptop and one iPad per 7 students. You might have a lab, 20 devices, 11 of which aren't working. So it creates an inequity as relates to the public school. And the inequity has a disadvantage for what kind of student, Warren Mackey? For those who want to work in the 21st century. The workforce has forever been changed. With the advent of the robot, with the computer, technology, apps, if people can't perform in the 21st century, then use those devices in the 21st century, they're going to get left behind. You and I, David, we know a boatload of people, they have college degrees, but those degrees are not, they don't fit in with the modern workforce. And so people who are going to be employed, and David, I work with a 16-county area here in Southeast Tennessee. It's called the Southeast Tennessee Development Corporation. They all say the same thing. We need a workforce. We need an educatable workforce, and with so many people being left behind, we're not meeting those needs. And one indicator that we don't have that workforce, David, is since 2010, 23,000 new people have moved into Hamilton County to take these jobs. It just seems right to me that those persons who have paid taxes and helped bring those jobs to town, we need to make room for them.
This is David Toulis. We're talking with Warren Mackey. Well, let me get back to my question. You said the question was, who is most damaged by this inequity that is being just highlighted by the Unified Ed paper and the letter from the 130 people today who sort of agree with the argument. And you said, well, people who are wanting to work in the technologically advanced society. But is there another part to that answer? Should not the answer be as if I can just ask you, that we have poor people, we have minorities, we have immigrant families? Are those the ones that you're talking about also, or just maybe want to work in the technological future?
Some of these schools, like Signal Mountain, they will not have a problem finding resources for computer labs. And some of these schools, like maybe some of my schools, you've got 95% of the kids on free and reduced lunch. That's an indicator of poverty. And that, because they are impoverished, it creates a lot of problems, crime, on Highway 58. We don't have a lot of craziness on Highway 58 because there's a group of people, and we work very hard to keep those kids engaged, and so they don't have time. We got them in the ball fields, we got them in programs, and it creates for a more stable community.
Well, what is the answer that Unified is proposing, or what? Let's not ask that question. What is the answer that you would say is the most appropriate to remedy the problem that we're identifying here as lack of equity? What are the solutions?
Let's accept the premise that it take more money to educate some students as opposed to others. Now, if you get a student, say a Hispanic student, they're running into issues. If you have a person with a physical handicap, it's going to take more money to educate that person. So maybe what needs to take place is the schools might need to fund the schools based on the needs of those students, as opposed to just giving a basic amount per student.
You don't have equity, you have to have sort of inequity in education.
There's huge inequities, huge, ranging from physical plant, the building, and I think you'll agree with me that the condition of the building can influence and impact how the kids perceive their education, the value of it.
Well, say a little bit something about yourself, Warren Mackey. You are on the county commission. You're finishing your 12th year, just about to have 13 full years there. You're a former history professor. What kind of history did you teach at Chat State? And say a little bit more about your life as a businessman and a family man.
Let me begin by saying I am a proud resident and native of Chattanooga. I grew up on Riverside Drive. That's where the family home was. That was the neighborhood I grew up in. And it was kind of an isolated community because there was no other neighborhoods around us. There were some physical barriers. The railroad separated us. The river separated us. And so we were more of a rural community. And we grew up, I grew up on Riverside Drive, and I went to public schools. I think we have very good teachers. And once I graduated, I went away to Tennessee State in Nashville. I attended a couple of other schools, Wayne State in Detroit, Middle Tennessee State, University of Texas. And as a consequence of that, like most people at that point, we came back to serve our community. The idea, and it was one that grew out of Booker T. Washington, but Du Bois' idea of the talented 10th, that persons were to go out, the talented 10th were the top educated people were to go out, receive their training, come back, serve their community.
Were you running your monument business sometime back? Is it recently started, or have you been
no, for me, after I had been at Chattanooga State about 20 years, all of us have goals. And I had said to myself, before I leave this planet, there's several things I want to have done. I wanted to have enjoyed a career, and I wanted to have enjoyed the toys. You know what the toys are.
Well, go ahead. You elaborate as you want to.
I won't go into that. But there's several goals that I had And once I had put 20 years in, I had started thinking about what was I going to do. And that's when I started thinking about public life. I ran for office. I won. And I have enjoyed my service. As a matter of fact, the state constitution in Tennessee requires every county to have a county commission to oversee the affairs of that county. That commission is to do things like provide educational department, sheriff department, health department. Now, in many of those counties, they have created municipalities or cities, and just like Chattanooga is a municipality, East Ridge is a municipality. When they did that, in many ways, those cities said they were going to take on those concerns. Like once upon a time, the city of Chattanooga had a Chattanooga public school system. Well, when they went out of business, we were required to take over those schools. And I'll tell you, and it's probably in keeping with what Unified Ed has said, when those schools were brought into the system, I don't think they were fully brought in equitably.
Well, to attain equity in the service of educational benefits for families in Hamilton County, Warren Mackey, Commissioner, do you not think that the school business could be somehow exited? Chattanooga got out of the school business. Is there any reason, is there any possibility, is there any argument for Hamilton County getting out of the school business in the information age? And
No. We can't, by law. The Constitution requires that the county educate the population. That's one of the major services we render. And as a result of the education, it does so many other things. It helps keep people employed. It helped keep them out of jobs. David, it is a sad, sad thing that every single day Hamilton County has to spend $94,000 to keep people in jail. Now, if these people had jobs, I mean, just think about it. In fact, right now, if we were to take, say, 2 weeks of that money, redirect it into programs that's going to help keep kids out of jail, look what we could do. Look, that is unsustainable. There are certain things in Hamilton County that ought to send out alarms.
The jail budget for 2017 was $12.4 million. It had, on average, 558 inmates, and there were 7,500 arrests in 2017. So there really are too many arrests, you're suggesting. And if you're suggesting, Warren Mackey, somehow that if we have better schools, that enforcement procedures will differ.
Well,
they don't really connect those.
True. What I want to say is Hamilton County, in our budget this year, 2019, we're going to give the sheriff department $103 million. $103 million. The sheriff is saying that he needs a new jail that's going to cost $100 million. And you know, like I know, David, the jails are not in the business of trying to improve people. They're there to lock people up.
They're pretty punitive.
And it hurt in so many ways. When crimes are committed, parents are taken away from their kids. Those kids they're unprotected, they're unsupervised, and they themselves begin to get caught up into this cycle.
Are you proposing a difference in management of the jail, Warren Mackey, since we're talking about jails? What can be done better?
What I would do is, when we grant funding to run the jails, I wish a certain portion of that money was allocated towards rehabbing those prisoners.
Well, Sheriff Hammond complains, Warren Mackey, that a fourth of his prisoners are people with, or a third, have mental problems. They don't really be there.
Without a doubt. So Ronald Reagan, he closed the mental health centers in America. So many of those people who are mentally ill, they need a different kind of treatment. The jail is not the place for them. They need a mental facility, and that would alleviate and then put that person back on a course towards where they could be a productive citizen as opposed to stand in the jail.
What is the prospect of Hamilton County or Chattanooga becoming more independent politically? We have half of the revenues that go to the county government, exactly 50%, 46.7% are intergovernmental, meaning state and federal. 50% of revenues are from taxes. If we have the prospect of in a devolutionary, decentralizing era, we have a prospect I would like to suggest of more self-determination of our own future here, our own destiny in Hamilton County. How can we attain that somehow, given that we're attached to these subsidies?
I can't see it happening, and I'll tell you why. Just like one friend, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, there were neighbors, there were communities who wanted to be de-annexed. They wanted to go in the opposite direction. Go ahead.
We have a call. Caller David Toulis and County Commissioner Warren Mackey. What's on your mind?
First of all, Reagan had nothing to do with closing the jails. It was the Supreme Court that did it. The Supreme Court ruled, and I can't remember the case, that a certain mental capacity need to be released because the government was using it as a gulag with political dissidents. So you can't just throw people in jail if they're cognizant. We're all nuts, except you and me. But the problem goes back to, I'm 60 years old, the individual. It's drugs and alcohol that's the problem. And I can tell you, growing up in Philadelphia, a lot of my friends either died of drugs, alcohol, or some other stupid things they did. And the CIA brought this in the 40s and 50s in the black communities in New York. We all know that. And it's spread out. And the government is culpable for this poison. Look at cigarettes. What a poison that is.
Get to the point about county life, please. Go ahead. What's your point about the county?
The point is it's an individual effort. People have to say no. And people have become stupid and lazy. And they want to be high and they want to be amused. You know what the word amuse means? Amused. This is individual. And Hammond has the right idea where if somebody has a mental issue, which they're on drugs or alcohol, they don't need to be in prison. It doesn't do anything for them. But let's take individual responsibility and say no drugs, no alcohol, be responsible.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Warren Mackey.
He said a lot. Right now, the opioid problem, it is ravishing many of these neighborhoods, many of these states, many of the budgets. And I don't disagree with you that drugs were introduced and the drugs have continued to morph into different kinds of drugs, and drugs that have been brought in now, they're becoming more potent, more pure, more deadly. And how do you stop that? You and I will agree that the family in America has suffered a breakdown in so many ways. You got so many single parent families, and that's not to say that a single parent can't do a good job, but there are some who say that it takes both the man, the husband, and the wife to have a healthy environment in which that kid can grow and be secure and not be weak to a point where they have to find other friends or other networks to feel like they're somebody.
This is David Toulis. If you have a question for me or for Warren Mackey, our guest today, he is a county commissioner seeking re-election. He's been on the commission for 12 years. Dr. Mackey, he's Dr. Mackey, having been an academician, having taught 38 years history. And at Chester, what line of history did you specialize in?
I wrote my dissertation on Roosevelt's New Deal, and I have been really amused. I mean, let me start over. You say I taught history. I say I taught people how to think using the subject matter of history. Now, my dissertation was on Roosevelt's New Deal, and I have really been amused, David, that the more that people have wanted government out of their lives, the more people have cried. Many of those great programs, just like the Tennessee Valley Authority, there were a group of people who said that government is too big, and the previous administration said, well, we hear you, government is too big, so let's sell off, let's privatize the Tennessee Valley Authority. Well, all of a sudden, that was a wake-up call. Those who want to, like Social Security, one of those great New Deal programs. You and I, David, you and I will agree that it seems that many of the people born today will have to work the rest of their lives. They won't be able to look forward to having the type of retirement that you and I can look forward to.
And is that because of the central bank deflating the money and the federal power over borrowing to the point of collapse?
Well,
we can't enjoy the future prospect or whatnot.
The only thing that I'm going to say is that like here in Hamilton County, you will agree with me that we do have challenges. If you were to ask Warren Mackey, what are the major challenges Hamilton County needs to look at in the future? One is going to
And we'll be right back after these encouraging words.
3, 2, 1. Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
The man who was shot by cops is out of the hospital and in jail. 50-year-old Joel Harris was punctured by hot lead after officers responded to a call of a disturbance with a weapon on Tunnel Boulevard. Harris was released from the hospital yesterday and shipped off to jail, charged with attempted first-degree murder, aggravated assault on a police officer, and other charges. Property tax increase finalized for Red Bank. Red Bank commissioners voted Tuesday night to increase the property tax in the city by 20 cents to a total of $1.39 per $100 of assessed property value. Court case delayed for a man accused of throwing a dog out a car window. Philemon Sayans III was in Saudi Daisy Court Tuesday night, but the judge pushed his next hearing date back to October the 9th because no witnesses were prepared to testify. Belle St. John for Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7. Action News now.
Keon Rose, Nooga Radio 92.7 Action Sports. Now, in soccer action, Chattanooga FC stomps out the Atlanta Silverbacks 4-1 to remain at the top of the Southeast Division in the NPSL. Atlanta struck first in the first half with a goal from striker Thierry Jules. Chattanooga wouldn't tie the game up until the 72nd minute with a goal from Caleb Cole. And then the goal parade began. Chattanooga FC would score 3 more times in the next